What kind of person climbs a ladder to spy over a neighbor's fence, only to crash in a heap of humiliation? That's the question that burned in my mind as I stood over Karen Thompson, sprawled in the dirt of my backyard, her ladder tipped over like a fallen soldier in her personal war against my privacy. The evening air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the hum of cicadas, but the tension between us crackled louder than any summer bug. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, had been my shadow for months, her eyes always narrowing at my garden, my fence, my very existence. I'd caught her this time, red-handed, her binoculars dangling from her neck like a badge of her obsession. But here's the kicker. She had no idea I was the one who designed the neighborhood's entire security system. Cameras, sensors, the works. Every move she made, I'd been watching. My name is Elise Harper, and I moved to Willow Creek 2 years ago, seeking a quiet life after a decade in cybersecurity. I traded server rooms for garden trowels, or so I thought. Willow Creek was picture perfect. Manicured lawns, white picket fences, and a community that prided itself on order. But Karen? She was the storm cloud in this idyllic scene. From the moment I planted my first rose bush, she'd been on me like a hawk. My fence was an inch too tall, she claimed. My dog's bark was a decibel too loud. My mailbox wasn't regulation standard. Every complaint came with a typed letter on crisp HOA letterhead, her signature scrawled in aggressive loops. I ignored her at first, thinking she'd tire herself out. But Karen didn't tire. She escalated. It started with notes, then visits. She'd knock on my door, clipboard in hand, rattling off violations like a prosecutor in a courtroom. I'd smile, nod, and close the door, but her presence lingered like a bad smell. Then the rumors started. Whispers at the neighborhood potluck that I was hiding something behind my fence. "What's she growing back there?" Karen would ask, her voice dripping with suspicion. "Why is her yard so private?" I laughed it off. My yard was just a garden, a sanctuary of roses and lavender, a place to escape the world. But Karen's paranoia grew, and soon I noticed her car slowing as it passed my house, her eyes peering over her sunglasses. I didn't realize how far she'd go until that evening, when the ladder clattered against my fence and I caught her in the act. I stood there, arms crossed, as she scrambled to her feet, dirt smudged across her pristine khakis. Her face was a mix of embarrassment and defiance, her blonde bob askew, a leaf stuck in her hair. "Elise," she stammered, "this isn't what it looks like." I raised an eyebrow, pointing at the binoculars. "Really? Because it looks like you were spying on me." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her cheeks flushing red. I should have been angry, but part of me was amused. Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. I'd spent years outsmarting hackers and corporate spies. Her amateur sleuthing was child's play. But as I helped her up, brushing dirt off her arm, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't just nosiness. It was fear. Fear of what? I didn't know yet, but it planted a seed of doubt in my mind. What was driving her to this? The next morning, I checked the footage from my security system. I'd installed it myself, a network of discrete cameras and motion sensors I designed for the entire neighborhood when Willow Creek was built. The HOA had hired my old firm, not knowing I was the lead engineer. I kept that quiet, preferring anonymity in my new life. The footage showed Karen's ladder stunt in crisp detail. Her wobbly climb, her binoculars glinting in the moonlight, her fall when the ladder slipped. But it also showed something else. Her car parked 2 streets away, as if she didn't want to be seen. And before she climbed, she'd glanced around nervously, clutching a small notebook. What was she writing? What was she so desperate to find? I decided to play her game. If Karen wanted to dig into my life, I'd dig into hers. I started small, asking neighbors casual questions over coffee. Karen was a widow, they said, moved here 5 years ago after her husband's death. She ruled the HOA with an iron fist, but no one knew much about her past. "She's just Karen," my neighbor Tom said, shrugging, always sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. But I wasn't satisfied. I ran a background check. Nothing invasive, just public records. Karen Thompson, 52, no criminal history, no red flags. Yet something fell off. Her obsession with my yard wasn't random. I needed to know why. That afternoon, I found her notebook. It was lying in the dirt where she'd fallen, half buried under a hydrangea. I shouldn't have picked it up, but curiosity got the better of me. The pages were filled with meticulous notes, dates, times, descriptions of my yard. New trellis installed, 6/12. Unknown plants, possibly illegal. 7/3. Dog barks at 2 a.m. Suspicious. Suspicious? My golden retriever, Max, barked at squirrels, not secrets. But one entry stopped me cold. Security system override codes? Check with HOA. My blood ran cold. She was after my system. The one I'd built. The one no one knew I'd built. I confronted her that evening at the HOA meeting. The community center was packed, neighbors sipping coffee and gossiping about lawn care. Karen stood at the podium, all business in her blazer, but her eyes darted to me when I walked in. I waited until the meeting ended, then approached her. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice low, "we need to talk about your notebook." Her face paled, but she recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "I don't know what you're talking about, Elise." I held up the notebook, watching her composure crack. "This, found it in my yard. Care to explain why you're logging my every move?" The room went quiet. Neighbors turned to stare. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, the Queen of Willow Creek was speechless. Karen's silence didn't last long. She snatched the notebook from my hand, her fingers trembling, and hissed, "This is private property, Elise. You had no right." I stepped closer, my voice steady. "Neither did you, climbing my fence to spy on me." The neighbors murmured, their eyes wide with the thrill of drama. Karen's face hardened, and she straightened, regaining her queenly poise. "I'm protecting this community," she said loudly, addressing the room. "Elise's secretive behavior is a threat to our safety. Who knows what she's hiding behind that fence?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt the weight of their stares, but I wasn't about to let her spin this. "Protecting the community?" I said, my tone sharp. "We're obsessed with control. You've been watching me for months, Karen." "What?" She faltered, her eyes flicking to the notebook. I pressed my advantage. "You wrote about my security system. Override codes. What's that about?" The room buzzed with confusion. Tom, the neighbor who'd called Karen nosy, piped up. "What's this about security codes, Karen? You're not supposed to mess with that." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the crowd, her voice rising. "Elise is the one you should be questioning. She's the outsider here, not me." It was a desperate move, deflecting blame, but it worked. Neighbors I'd shared coffee with now looked at me with suspicion. I realized then that Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was a master manipulator. I left the meeting shaken but determined. Karen's accusation had turned the neighborhood against me, but her mention of override codes was a clue. She knew more about the security system than she should. I spent the next day digging deeper, accessing the HOA's server through an old backdoor I'd left in the system. What I found was a shock. Someone had been trying to hack the security network, probing for weaknesses. The attempts were clumsy, amateurish, but persistent. They traced back to an IP address registered to Karen's house. My stomach churned. Karen wasn't just spying. She was trying to break into the system I'd built. But why? What did she think I was hiding? That night, I invited Tom over, hoping to get more insight. Over beers in my kitchen, he shared a story that changed everything. Karen's husband, he said, leaning in, he wasn't just some guy. He was a cop, Elise. Died in a sting operation gone wrong. Word is, Karen never got over it. She's been paranoid ever since, thinks everyone's hiding something. My mind raced. A cop's widow, haunted by loss, seeing threats where there were none. It explained her obsession, but not the hacking attempts. Did she ever mention the security system? I asked. Tom frowned. Not directly, but she's always going on about keeping Willow Creek safe. Says it's her duty. The twist came the next morning. I was reviewing more footage when I noticed something odd. A man, not Karen, climbing my fence the night before her fall. He was quick, dressed in black, and carried a small device. a signal jammer. My heart pounded. Karen wasn't working alone. This wasn't just about her paranoia. Someone else was involved, someone with tech skills. I checked the security logs again and found a second IP address, this one from outside Willow Creek. Whoever this was, they were helping Karen, or using her. I needed to find out who. I decided to bait her. I left my gate unlocked, knowing she'd take the chance to snoop again. Sure enough, that evening, my cameras caught her creeping into my yard, this time with a flashlight and a phone. I watched from my office, my screens glowing with live feeds. She wasn't alone. The man in black was with her, whispering as they scanned my garden. My roses, my lavender, my sanctuary, they were tearing through it like it was a crime scene. I could have called the police, but I wanted answers. I grabbed my phone and sent a text to Tom. Get to my house. Now. When Tom arrived, we confronted them. Karen froze, her flashlight beam shaking in her hand. The man bolted, but Tom, faster than I expected, tackled him. Who are you? I demanded, standing over them. The man glared, silent, but Karen crumbled. It's not what you think, Elise, she sobbed. I was trying to protect us. Her voice broke, and for the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes again. Not just paranoia, but something deeper. Protect us from what? I pressed. She looked at the man, then back at me, her voice barely a whisper. From you. Karen's words hit like a punch. Protect them from me? I stood in my backyard, the moonlight casting long shadows over the torn-up roses, Tom still pinning the man in black to the ground. Karen's flashlight lay abandoned in the dirt, its beam cutting a weak path through the night. My heart raced, not from anger but from the surreal weight of her accusation. I was the threat, the woman who'd spent years safeguarding systems, who'd built the very security network that kept Willow Creek safe. I knelt beside Karen, keeping my voice calm despite the storm inside me. Explain, I said. What do you think I'm doing? Her eyes were wild, tears streaking her face. You're hiding something, she whispered. The cameras, the sensors, it's all a front. You're watching us, controlling us. I almost laughed at the absurdity, but the man in black grunted, struggling under Tom's grip. Tell her, Karen, he spat. Tell her about the deal. The deal. That word sent a chill down my spine. I looked at the man, his face half hidden in shadow, his eyes sharp with defiance. What deal? I asked, my voice steady but cold. Karen shook her head, sobbing harder, but the man smirked. She thought you were running a racket, he said. Thought your garden was a cover for something illegal. I told her I could help her prove it. My mind reeled. A racket? In my garden? I glanced at my lavender, my trellis, the ordinary beauty I'd pour my heart into. This was madness. But the man's words kept coming. I offered her the codes to your system. For a price. Karen gasped, turning to him. You said you keep me safe. Derek. Derek. The name landed like a puzzle piece snapping into place. I stood, my mind racing through the security logs, the IP addresses, the signal jammer. Derek wasn't just some random accomplice. He was the tech behind Karen's obsession. I turned to her. You hired him to hack my system? Karen's sobs grew louder, but she nodded. I thought you were dangerous, Elise. After my husband died, I swore I'd never let a threat slip by again. Your fence, your cameras, it felt wrong. Her voice broke, and I saw the grief behind her paranoia, the widow haunted by a past she couldn't escape. But pity didn't erase the damage. She'd crossed a line, and Derek? He was no innocent helper. He was using her fear for his own gain. Tom hauled Derek to his feet, his grip unrelenting. What's your game? I asked Derek, stepping closer. He shrugged, his smirk infuriating. Just business. Karen paid me to dig into your system. Said she'd split the HOA funds if I could prove you were trouble. My jaw dropped. HOA funds? Karen's face crumpled, and she sank to her knees. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I just wanted to know the truth. The truth. That word echoed in my head, heavy with irony. The truth was, Karen's paranoia had been weaponized, and I was the target. But the bigger truth was still out there. Who was Derek, really? And how deep did this go? I called the police, keeping my eyes on Derek as Tom held him. Karen sat in the dirt, her head in her hands, a broken figure under the weight of her choices. The cops arrived quickly, their flashlights sweeping my yard like a crime scene. As they cuffed Derek, I pulled an officer aside and showed him the security footage, every moment of Karen spying, Derek's trespassing, the signal jammer. The officer nodded, his face grim. "We'll need to talk to you both," he said, glancing at Karen. She didn't resist as they led her away, her eyes empty, her fight gone. But as Derek passed me, he leaned in, his voice low. "You think this is over? Check your system. Harper." My blood ran cold. He knew my name. Not just Elise, but Harper. How? I spent the next day tearing through my security network. Derek's threat wasn't empty. There were traces of a deeper breach, attempts to access not just my cameras, but the entire neighborhood system. He'd been probing for weeks, using Karen as a front while he worked in the shadows. I patched the vulnerabilities, my fingers flying over the keyboard, but my mind was elsewhere. Derek wasn't just a hired hacker. He had a bigger play, and I needed to know what it was. I tracked his IP address to a company called SecureNet, a shady cybersecurity outfit I'd heard of in my old life. They were known for corporate espionage, selling vulnerabilities to the highest bidder. Was Derek one of their operatives? And why target Willow Creek? I went to the police station, hoping for answers. Karen was there, released on bail, sitting in the waiting area like a ghost of her former self. I sat across from her, searching her face for the truth. "Karen," I said softly, "who is Derek really?" She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "I didn't know," she whispered. "He approached me months ago, said he could help me keep the neighborhood safe. I thought he was just a tech guy." She paused, her voice trembling. "He said you were dangerous, Elise. That your system was a cover for something bigger." I leaned back, stunned. Derek had played her from the start, feeding her paranoia to get to me. But why me? The police station smelled of stale coffee and regret. Karen's confession hung in the air, her words a mix of guilt and desperation. I wanted to believe she was just a pawn, but her actions had torn through my life like a storm. I left her there, her head bowed, and drove home, my mind racing. Derek's threat echoed in my ears. "Check your system, Harper." He knew too much, and I wasn't about to let him have the last word. Back in my office, I dove into the security logs again, cross-referencing every breach attempt with SecureNet's known tactics. The pattern was clear. Derek had been after the neighborhood's master control, the hub I designed to link every camera, every sensor. If he'd gotten in, he could have controlled the entire system, turning Willow Creek into his personal playground. I called an old colleague, Mia, from my cybersecurity days. She'd worked with me on the Willow Creek project and knew SecureNet's reputation. "Elise, if SecureNet's involved, this isn't about Karen," she said, her voice tense over the phone. "They don't mess with small-time HOAs. They're after something bigger: data, leverage, maybe even blackmail." My stomach twisted. Blackmail? Willow Creek was full of wealthy families, professionals with secrets. Had Derek used Karen to get to me, knowing I'd built the system? Was I the key to unlocking the neighborhood's vulnerabilities? I thanked Mia and hung up, my resolve hardening. I wasn't just fighting for my privacy anymore. This was about protecting everyone. I set a trap. Using my backdoor access, I planted a decoy file in the HOA server labeled Master Override Codes. It was a honeypot designed to lure Derek or his SecureNet buddies into revealing themselves. I added a tracker, so if anyone accessed it, I'd get their location. Then I waited. The next night, my phone pinged, a hit on the honeypot. The IP address traced to a warehouse outside town, not far from Willow Creek. I called Tom, who'd become my unlikely ally, and we drove out under the cover of darkness. The warehouse was a hulking shadow against the starry sky, its windows dark. We parked a block away, my heart pounding as I checked my laptop. The tracker showed someone still accessing the file, their signal live from inside. We crept closer, staying low. Through a cracked window, I saw Derek, his face lit by the glow of a laptop. He was alone, muttering to himself, his fingers flying over the keys. I signaled Tom to stay put and slipped inside, my old training kicking in. The warehouse smelled of oil and dust, its shelves stacked with old tech equipment. I moved silently, my eyes locked on Derek. He didn't hear me until I was steps away. "Looking for something?" I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. He spun around, his face pale, but the smirk returned. "You're good, Harper," he said, "but you're out of your depth." He reached for something, a flash drive, but I was faster, knocking it from his hand. It skittered across the floor, and I pinned him against the wall. "Who's pulling your strings?" I demanded. "SecureNet? Or someone else?" Derek laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You think this is about you? You're just collateral. The real prize is Willow Creek's data, every house, every secret." My blood ran cold. He wasn't just after my system. He was after the lives behind it. Before I could press him further, Tom burst in, his phone flashing with a 911 call. "Cops are coming," he said. Derek's eyes widened, and he lunged for the flash drive. I tackled him, the two of us crashing into a shelf, equipment raining down. By the time the police arrived, Derek was cuffed, the flash drive in my pocket. But as they dragged him away, he looked back at me, his eyes glinting with malice. "This isn't over," he said. "SecureNet doesn't forget." The next morning, I met with the HOA board, laying out everything. Karen's spying, Derek's hacking, SecureNet's scheme. The neighbors were stunned, their trust in Karen shattered. She'd resigned from the HOA, her reputation in ruins. I showed them the footage, the logs, the proof that I'd been protecting them all along. But the victory felt hollow. Karen's paranoia had been exploited, her grief twisted into a weapon. And Derek? He was just a cog in a larger machine. SecureNet was still out there, and I knew they'd come for me again. I strengthened the system, adding layers of encryption, but the weight of it all lingered. I'd won this battle, but the war wasn't over. I visited Karen that evening. She was packing her car, her face drawn, her eyes avoiding mine. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. "I can't stay here." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me wanted to hate her, but I saw the broken woman behind the clipboard, the widow who'd let fear consume her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing." I touched her arm, a small gesture. "We all make mistakes," I said. "Just try to find peace." She nodded, tears falling, and drove away, her taillights fading into the dusk. Karen's departure left a void in Willow Creek, but it wasn't just her absence that lingered. It was the realization that our perfect little neighborhood had been a house of cards. I stood in my garden, the roses battered but still blooming, and felt the weight of what I'd uncovered. Derek was in custody, but SecureNet was a shadow, a threat that didn't vanish with one arrest. I'd spent years building systems to protect people, but this time it was personal. My home, my sanctuary, had been violated, and the neighbors I protected now looked at me with a mix of gratitude and unease. I was the hero, but also the reminder of how fragile their safety was. I threw myself into fixing the damage. I upgraded the security system, adding fail-safes and alerts that even SecureNet couldn't crack. Tom helped, his loyalty surprising me. He wasn't just a guy next door anymore. He was a friend, someone who'd seen the truth and stood by me. "You're like Batman," he joked one afternoon, hauling a new camera to my roof. I laughed, but it felt forced. Batman didn't have to deal with HOA meetings or nosy neighbors. Still, his support grounded me, a reminder that not everyone in Willow Creek was swayed by Karen's fear-mongering. The neighborhood slowly healed. The HOA elected a new president, a quiet woman named Linda, who cared more about community than control. Meetings became less about rules and more about connection, potlucks, garden tours, even a dog park for Max. But I couldn't shake the feeling that SecureNet was watching. I kept tabs on their activity, monitoring dark web forums where their name popped up. They were still out there, selling data, exploiting weaknesses. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd stop them for good. Derek's words haunted me. "You're just collateral." Collateral for what? I needed to know. I reached out to Mia again, asking her to dig into SecureNet's clients. She came through a week later, her voice grim over the phone. "Elise, this goes deeper than you think. SecureNet's been hired by a developer, someone trying to buy up Willow Creek for a commercial project. Your system was in their way. My heart sank. A developer? Willow Creek was prime real estate, but turning it into strip malls or condos would destroy everything we loved. My security system, with its cameras and sensors, made it harder for them to pressure residents into selling. I was the obstacle, and Karen had been their unwitting tool. I called an emergency HOA meeting, laying out the truth. The neighbors listened, their faces a mix of shock and anger. They used Karen to get to you? Linda asked, her voice shaking. I nodded. And they're not done. If we don't stand together, they'll pick us off one by one. For the first time, Willow Creek felt united. We formed a plan, strengthened the security, refused to sell, and exposed the developer. I share my expertise, teaching neighbors how to spot phishing emails and secure their homes. It wasn't just about cameras anymore. It was about trust. But the fight took its toll. Late nights in my office, scanning for threats, left me exhausted. Max sensed it, curling up at my feet as I worked. One night, I found a new message on a forum. Harper's system is tight, but we've got another way in. My blood ran cold. They were still coming. I doubled down, encrypting everything, but the fear lingered. I wasn't just protecting my home now. I was protecting a community. The weight of it pressed on me, but it also fueled me. I'd built this system to keep people safe, and I wasn't about to let it fall. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A neighbor, a retired lawyer named Susan, found a paper trail linking the developer to a local politician. It was enough to go public. We contacted a journalist, and within days, the story broke. Corporate greed targets Willow Creek. The developer backed off, their plans exposed. SecureNet went quiet, their operation stalled. It wasn't a total victory, but it was a start. I stood in my garden, the roses blooming brighter, and felt a flicker of hope. We'd fought back, together and won. The news article was a turning point, but victory didn't erase the scars. Willow Creek was safe for now, but the trust we'd lost, in Karen, in each other, would take longer to rebuild. I walked my garden each morning, Max trotting beside me, and tried to find peace in the routine. The roses were thriving, their petals a quiet defiance against the chaos of the past months. But every creak of my gate, every shadow in the dusk, made my heart skip. SecureNet was still out there, and I knew they didn't forgive or forget. I kept my system on high alert, my screens glowing late into the night, a silent guardian for a neighborhood that didn't fully understand what I'd done. Tom became my anchor. He'd stop by with coffee, his easy grin a reminder that life went on. You saved us, Elise, he said one evening, sitting on my porch. I shook my head. We saved each other. It was true. Willow Creek had rallied, neighbors stepping up in ways I hadn't expected. Susan's legal work, Linda's leadership, even the kids who started a petition to protect our green spaces, it all mattered. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd painted a target on my back. SecureNet knew my name, my skills. I'd humiliated them, and they'd come for me again. I started teaching cybersecurity workshops at the community center, sharing just enough to empower my neighbors without revealing my full past. They listened, wide-eyed, as I explained how to spot scams or secure their Wi-Fi. It was my way of giving back, of turning fear into strength. But one evening, a new face showed up, a man in his 30s, quiet, taking notes. Something about him fell off, his questions too specific, his eyes too sharp. I watched him leave, memorizing his license plate. When I ran it, it traced to a rental car, no name attached. My instinct screamed, SecureNet. I didn't tell the neighbors. They'd been through enough, and I didn't want to spark panic. Instead, I tightened my own defenses, adding facial recognition to my cameras and a silent alarm to my phone. Days passed without incident, but I couldn't relax. Then, one night, my alarm went off. A camera caught the man from the workshop creeping along my fence, a device in his hand. Another jammer. My pulse raced, but I was ready. I activated a lockdown protocol I'd built into the system, trapping him in a loop of false signals. He didn't know I was watching, didn't know I'd rerouted his hack back to his own device. By the time the police arrived, he was cursing, his screen frozen. They took him away, but he said nothing, just like Derek. The incident shook me, but it also clarified something. This wasn't just about Willow Creek anymore. It was about standing up to those who prey on trust. I reached out to Mia again, asking her to leak SecureNet's tactics to a cybersecurity blog. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd shine a light on them. The post went viral, exposing their schemes, and soon, other neighborhoods reported similar threats. We weren't alone. I started a network, connecting communities to share strategies, to fight back. Willow Creek became a model, our story a warning and a rallying cry. One evening, as I sat on my porch, Max at my feet, Tom brought over a letter. It was from Karen. She'd moved to a small town upstate, starting over. I was wrong, she wrote. You were the protector, not the threat. I'm sorry, and I'm trying to be better. I folded the letter, my heart heavy but lighter than before. Karen's fall had been her own, but it had also been a mirror, showing me the power of fear and the strength of truth. I looked out at Willow Creek, the lights warm in every window, and felt a surge of pride. We'd faced the storm and come out stronger. The seasons turned, and Willow Creek bloomed again, not just with flowers but with a new kind of unity. My garden became a gathering place, neighbors stopping by to share coffee or stories, their kids playing with Max. The fear that had gripped us faded, replaced by a quiet resilience. I still check my security system daily, but the alerts were fewer, the shadows less threatening. SecureNet had gone underground, their reputation bruised by the exposure. I knew they might resurface, but I was ready. I'd built more than a system. I'd built a community. I kept teaching, not just in Willow Creek, but online, sharing my knowledge with anyone who wanted to protect their home. My workshops grew, drawing people from across the state. I didn't talk about Karen or Derek, but their shadows lingered in my lessons. Trust your instincts, but don't let fear rule you. One day, a young woman approached me after a class, her eyes bright with determination. I want to learn what you know, she said. I want to keep my family safe. I smiled, seeing a spark of myself in her. I gave her my old cybersecurity manuals, the ones I'd studied years ago, and told her to start small. Build something strong, I said, and never stop learning. That night, I sat in my garden, the stars bright above. Max lay beside me, his warmth a comfort. I thought of Karen, of her letter, of the mistakes we all make when fear takes the wheel. I thought of Derek, of SecureNet, of the battles still to come. But mostly, I thought of Willow Creek, the neighbors who'd rallied, the community we'd forged. I'd come here for a quiet life, but I'd found something better, purpose. My roses swayed in the breeze, their scent a reminder that beauty could thrive even after a storm. I wasn't just a gardener or a coder or a protector. I was Elise Harper, and I'd turn a ladder's fall into a stand for something greater.